Let's talk about comparison. This is something that is universal, part of us as a collective. It's part of being a human being. Every single person on the planet experiences a level of comparison at some point in their life. We all compare ourselves against our friends, our family, people that we see online. I did this just now. I was setting up for this video, and whilst I was setting up, I was thinking about other YouTubers and how they style their videos. We naturally pin ourselves against other people to kind of understand where we fit amongst everybody else. It very rarely leads to positive things. It typically leads us to feeling bad about ourselves. How can we instead change the way that we're looking at things so that it can become something that serves us instead of something that hinders us? Because that's the issue with comparison. Often when we compare ourselves, we tend to see the best in other people and not necessarily the best in ourselves. And so we don't actually place ourselves accurately. So we often think worse of ourselves than we actually are. Most of us, I think, try to work on this and try not to compare ourselves to other people, but it's very difficult. And that's because if we don't look at other people, we have nothing to measure ourselves against. So this is a very normal trait that we all have. As human beings, this is part of how we understand who we are. It's part of how we understand how we're performing. It's how we kind of identify ourselves and see how we're doing in our society. We have a natural tendency to look at everybody else in order to place ourselves. The negative side of that is that if we place ourselves in a way that is not favorable, that can have many negative impacts on our life. So that can affect our self-esteem, our level of motivation. It can lead to things like depression. These are obviously extremes, but it's just to illustrate that this is actually something that is very important, and it's something that's worth taking note of. This is a topic that is even more important to discuss at the moment in the age of social media. So before this time, before social media, typically we were just exposed to the people that we knew. So our friends, our family, the people in our circle, our acquaintances, and of course you have celebrities that are outliers, but typically we were just exposed to the people in our circle. And so that would be the basis of this comparison. And since we're the average of the people we surround ourselves with, typically we would be performing or doing just as well as everybody else around us in our circle. So this was not such a problem. But the issue with social media, we're now exposed to so many more people, all demographics, and people don't often post the mundane parts of their lives. They don't post the parts of their lives where they're struggling. And the majority of things that we see people post online is a highlight reel. It's 5% of their life, and it's their successes. It's only the positives. We all do it, because nobody necessarily wants to go online and kind of share their struggles, particularly whilst they're still processing those things. It's natural that you would want to share all the positive things in your life. It's natural that you'd want to share your successes because you're feeling celebratory about it. You feel as though you've reached a milestone or you've achieved something. But the downside is the impact that it has on people. And we all know that. I think everybody knows that people are sharing their highlight reels, that this doesn't mean that you're seeing the full picture of somebody's life, but it doesn't stop our brains from just comparing against that. Our brain doesn't seem to intellectualize, it doesn't seem to take into account the other 95% of somebody's life. It just looks at that, and because we have it now on such a mass scale, we have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that we can be exposed to at any given time, and we're seeing all of them succeeding, all of these successes, all of these milestones. And we're then looking at our life, and we're looking at the entirety of our life, and our life doesn't look like that, and nor should it, because life isn't like that. But the issue is our brain doesn't take that into account. It just automatically makes us feel bad about our situation because what we're seeing in our life doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like every week I'm in another country. It doesn't look like I'm making a 6-figure month, got proposed to in my dream location, all of these things. And so we really have to become more conscious. We really have to make more of an effort not to fall into that mindset of feeling bad about ourselves when we see these things online. But it's just about thinking about comparison in a different way. And I have come up with some ways that I use this in my life, because Comparison is something that I struggle with, and it's something that I find hard to eliminate completely. And so I don't try to eliminate it necessarily. I think sometimes, especially in the personal development world, we can often be told, oh, get rid of this habit, reprogram your mind in this way, change this behavior. And often it's not easy. It's very difficult, especially if it's something that you've been doing for years and not just you as an individual. These things that we're talking about, comparison, it's something that has been passed down through generations. It is not the easiest thing to just eliminate from your life. So how can we look at this differently? How can I compare but do it in a way that empowers me? How can I compare but do it in a way that leaves me feeling better about myself and doesn't lead to that disempowering loop? We're not trying to eliminate it here. I mean, if you can eliminate it, of course, that's better. But if this is something that you struggle with and you're not able to eliminate it, I have some suggestions of how you can actually use it to make you feel more empowered. Everything that I share on this channel, the intention is not to shame anyone. The intention is not to make anyone feel bad about themselves. I only share things that I implement in my own life and things that I would like to hear as well. So it's all with good intention. I am all for leveling up our consciousness and not just seeing things in one light, you know, thinking about things outside of the box, thinking about things from a different angle. And so that's the intention with all of these points that I'm sharing. So the first thing is all about being fairer with this comparison. And it kind of touches on the point that I made about people on social media. Like I said, everybody on social media tends to share their highlight reel. You know, everyone's sharing their successes, their wins. Nobody's sharing the struggles. So we tend to compare ourselves against all of these people who are doing better than us. But what about the people who are technically doing worse than us? If we really think about it and we look at different areas of our lives, yes, we might not be where we want to be ultimately. We might not have reached the levels that we want to in certain areas, but I'm sure that we're actually further along, or we've made some sort of progress, or there are people that we can identify or situations that we can think of that would be worse situations to be in. So why do we never compare against the people who are doing worse than us? Or why do we never compare ourselves now to past versions of ourselves? So this is just recognizing when that comparison comes up, when you find yourself thinking, you know, this person's doing better than me, this person has reached this milestone, they've achieved this, I'm not quite there yet, I must be, you know, lagging behind, or I'm not doing so well because I haven't achieved this. Pause and think about some people who would kill to be in your situation. Pause and think about people who are literally praying for the life that you have, and just reflect, and also reflect on past versions of yourself. You know, maybe 2 years prior, you couldn't have imagined being where you are right now. And so it's just training our minds to not just look at everybody else's positives, but to be fair about it. So if we're looking ahead and saying everybody's further along, everybody's doing better, we can also look and say, well, actually, there are people who are not doing so well, or I consider myself to be in a better position than I was a year ago, or than I was 10 years ago. Just being fair in that comparison, not being so biased and only looking at people who you assume or feel like are doing better. Often that can make you feel so empowered. This is something that I do, and it really reminds me to practice gratitude. It really reminds me to be grateful for progress made, to be grateful for the journey, because often even when we reach a destination, it doesn't feel like we thought it would feel, right? But the lessons that you learned along the way, the journey, the experiences that you went through, the growth that you experience is often what makes it sweet. It's often the most valuable part. It's the things that you take out from the journey. It reminds you to practice gratitude, and that is a very powerful emotion to have. It's a very high frequency, high vibe emotion. And from that place, you can only attract more good things into your life, because once you start seeing things to be grateful for, you naturally see more things to be grateful for. It raises your vibration, and you naturally attract more and more good and more positive things into your life. It's a lot more empowering than kind of looking at other people, thinking that they're doing better than you are. that kind of puts you in a disempowering cycle. You start to feel bad about yourself. Your self-esteem perhaps goes down. You start to lose motivation, and that can take you on a very different trajectory than if you actually see things for what they are. And yes, maybe you aren't where you want to be. Maybe there are people doing way better than you, but actually there are also people who are not doing as well as you are. And there are also people who would do anything to be in your position. Recognize that you have made progress, and recognize that there are worse situations that you could be in. So just be fair. If you're going to compare, be fair about it. And so back to this point of looking at progress that we've made, right? If we must compare, another thing that we can do is try to minimize the amount that we're comparing to other people, and try as best as possible to compare to past versions of ourselves. So this could be comparing to how you were a year ago, 2 years ago, etc., or just different phases that you've been in. Perhaps when you were working one job versus when you were working another job, or comparing against when you were in one relationship versus how you are in this next relationship. How have you evolved? That could also be a good way to measure how you're doing. Is, are you still doing the same things that you were doing in the past relationship? Are you still doing them now, those negative things? Or have you let go of some things and you're now doing better? Have you evolved? This is a much healthier way of assessing our progress and seeing how we're doing. And we're still comparing, because like I said, this is kind of in our nature to compare. We're still comparing, and we're still using that as a metric. We're still using that as a way to assess how we're performing. But instead of looking at everybody else, the focus is only on us. The focus is on different versions of ourselves. And so that can be our basis for comparison. As the saying goes, your only competition is yourself, and you only want to make sure that you're doing better than the version of you yesterday. And that doesn't mean that you're perfect or you're striving for perfection every day, but in terms of the effort that you're putting in terms of like doing your best. I mean, some days your best is just going to be surviving. You're not going to be thriving every day. But just comparing it against the efforts that you're putting in, the mindset that you had the day before, or the mindset that you had a year prior, that's a much healthier way to compare. So time for one of my personal examples. So as you know, I recently started a YouTube channel. This is something that I was thinking about for over a year and didn't have the courage to do. And eventually I decided to start, right? So naturally, when you're starting something like that, you are going to compare yourself against everybody else on YouTube. And I watch lots of YouTube videos, so I have lots of people to compare myself against. So one thing that I personally do is I don't let myself compare my first few videos to somebody who has been on YouTube for 4 years. Like if I need to compare myself to somebody on YouTube, I will scroll back, and I have actually gone back, looked at where they started, looked at where they are now, and compared myself against that. And honestly, it made me feel very empowered, because some of these people that I follow, when they started 4 years ago, or when they started 3 years ago, their first videos, honestly, it's nothing like their videos now. When I compare my videos with their first videos, like, it makes me feel so much better about myself, because I actually think I'm doing very well compared to how some people were doing when they first started, and then looking at the growth that they've had. So it's made me very hopeful. I feel like my starting point is better. So if I continue, and if I learn, and if I improve, I can only get better. And so I will be at their level at some point. Okay, so now for some home truths, some tough love. We often compare ourselves against people who we think are doing much better than ourselves, right? And often, like I said, that can lead to us feeling demotivated. If we see everybody else doing so much better and we don't know how to get from where we are to where they are, or to where we want to be, it can negatively affect our self-esteem. It can make us feel bad about ourselves, and we can lose motivation, want to give up, not want to do anything. But the issue is that we're often just looking at a person's success. We're often just looking at the result that somebody has. And something that I'd like to encourage, and something that I try to do in my life, is to think about am I comparing myself to this person's habits? Like, how are my habits compared to this person's habits? So I want this person's results, but am I willing to do the things that this person is doing to get those results? I want this body that somebody else has, but am I willing to put in all the work that this person does? Am I willing to go to the gym 5 days a week? Am I willing to pay for a personal trainer? Am I willing to restrict my diet in a way that would give me those results? So I think it's important, if we are going to compare, to make sure that we're not being one-sided with this comparison. You know, if I want the results that somebody is getting and I'm comparing myself against this person, put yourself in that mindset of this person. What does this person do every day? What time does this person wake up? What thoughts does this person have? How does this person handle money? If you want those results, you then have to become that kind of person. And so if you're comparing yourself against somebody, compare yourself against their habits. Are you embodying somebody who has those results? That's how you'll get them, first of all. So don't kind of sit there and compare yourself against somebody, but actually not put in the actions. At least put the actions in. And then that makes more sense, at least, than kind of comparing yourself against somebody who's actually actively working towards something and is seeing results because of that when you haven't put that work in. Okay, so the next thing is, and this is again, if you really do struggle, something that you can do is try to separate your worth from certain actions or certain achievements. So like I said, we can often look at everybody else and say, oh, everybody else is doing so much better. Everybody is jet setting and getting promotions and getting married and all of these things. And I'm just sitting here with my cat. So one thing that we can do is separate our self-worth from these achievements, from these societal markers of success. I mean, who said that that's what makes somebody successful anyway, right? These things are all societal constructs. But it's things that we have been conditioned to believe are markers of success. And so we use that as a basis to compare ourselves against and to see how we're doing. And if we haven't achieved those things, or if we haven't reached those milestones, we automatically think that we're behind or we're not doing as well. And it's just not true. But as I said, it can be very difficult to just tell yourself and to tell your mind, oh, this isn't what success is, and to remind yourself that this is just conditioning and this is just societal construct. It's very hard to remind yourself in the moment that that's what's going on. We automatically just go back to thinking we're not doing as well. One thing that we can do instead is just try to separate our self-worth. And this is something that we kind of have to make part of our lifestyle, right? It's not something that we might necessarily remember in the moment. It's good if we do, but it's something that we just have to kind of work on and kind of build, almost like you would try to build a new muscle. So what we can do is just really learn to separate our self-worth from these markers of success or these milestones. So for instance, if something amazing happens, of course, celebrate, it's great, but don't let that mean that you are more valuable as a person. Don't tell yourself that when I reach this mark, when I achieve this thing, that will mean that I'm more valuable, or I will then be complete, or I will feel better about myself. Because in doing that, what you're saying is that you need those things in order to feel good about yourself. And so that becomes part of your self-worth and how you think about yourself. So we just need to remember that we are worthy just as we are, without doing anything. We don't have to perform, we don't have to achieve anything. We are worthy just for being alive, 100% worthy, regardless of anything that we do. And so let's just stop making these things so important and making them part of who we are as a person. Let's attach more value to qualities that we have in terms of, kindness, generosity, humility, things like that. Not, did I get married by 30? Am I making X pounds per year? Those things should never be part of our self-worth. Okay, so those are my thoughts on how we can kind of change the way we're comparing ourselves to other people and make ourselves feel a little bit more empowered. Let me know what you think of these in the comments. Let me know if there's anything else that you do, anything that I've missed. So if you try any of these things that I've suggested and you find that it helps, also let me know, or let me know if you'd like me to make a similar video about another topic. So go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I have lots of exciting videos coming, all centered around personal development and lifestyle. So if you have any ideas or anything that you want to see or anything that you'd like me to cover, then let me know. And also, if you found this video useful, or if you found anything on this channel useful, it would mean the world to me if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share the video with somebody who you think will benefit from it. And I will see you in my next one.